cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. My name is Sunny. I am your host, and I am not joined by my co-host, Giant Skyhawk. He is busy tonight. He has a weird work schedule this week. So for sure today, maybe on Friday's episode, we'll see. But for sure today, we have a wonderful guest with us today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mr. Trish?
Do I have to?
No, I mean, I have a whole spiel. I can keep going, but
I'm me. I'm Mike. I'm Mr. Tuvalu Trishula Television Man.
Absolutely. Well, do you want to tell people a little bit about who you are and where they can find you and your content? First things first.
Well, if you try to find me, please don't. But if you have to find me, I'm usually live on Twitch every day for the entire day. So if you need something to watch while you're at work, I'm probably live.
When he says he's usually live, he seriously, he means it. He is always live.
I have no friends, so Twitch chat is my friends. So say hi, Twitch chat. They're
sure. I'm actually his first friend. It's crazy.
I know, it's really crazy. I didn't know that interacting with other humans was a thing that people did. I thought everybody just kind of stayed in their apartment all the time and just never left.
And then you went to nationals and you were like, whoa, there's all these people.
yeah, there's all these people. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. There's people and human interaction. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do a few shout-outs real quick. So, of course, I want to shout out all of our patrons. We'll do the name patron read at the end of the episode. Also, a huge shout-out to my locals, ETB Games and Steelfox Games. They have regular case tournaments at both stores, and you can go there to check out all the singles and sealed products, and they have TCG player links for both of those down below. Of course, we also want to thank Dragon Shield and Gem Accessories, TCG Player, and Tier 0 Games. We have affiliate links for all those. Some of them are discount codes. All of that's in the description. And, of course, we want to recommend you check out our Teespring store, as well as we have an Apple and Spotify ratings on the Apple and Spotify podcasts area, as well as be sure to join our Discord and follow us on Twitter. Now, with that said, Mr. Trish, I do want to ask you to pretty please, I know you mentioned all day, every day on Twitch, but I really would love to hear you talk about your wonderful Twitter too.
What your
Discord server? Anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a Discord server. I mean, you can find that by using the exclamation code in my Twitch.
Of course, absolutely.
And I mean, I guess I exist on Twitter. You can find me at TrishulaTTV.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Well, I am certainly happy to have you here on the show. I will say, I really want to ask, who exactly, you don't have to tell me, who did you bribe at Konami when they were making your profile picture? Because they put in some work on that profile picture.
I don't know. I think they got me confused with Leonardo DiCaprio because my profile picture does not look like me. It does not look like me. But I got that when I played in a remote duel invitational back during COVID. So that would be a couple years now. I got top 4 at that event. So that was pretty fun. Was able to bring home a prize card from that tournament. So that was pretty nice.
Sick.
Pretty nice. But the real cool prize is that they gave everybody the profile picture. And I've just been rocking out with that ever since.
I mean, the profile picture is more exclusive than the prize card.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool thing to have. For
sure.
Happy to have it.
So I do want to go ahead and get on into your content, and your thoughts about not just the content that you do, but the things you do outside of the content. So,
Sure.
But starting with you, I would like to hear a ton as much as possible about you, what qualifies you in a lot of ways, such as like things about your history in the game, how you got started, your origin story, as well as how you evolved from your origins to where you are now.
Oh man. I mean, I've been playing this game.
It's a big question. I know.
I mean, I've been playing this game my whole life. You know, I started back when I was like in elementary school, pretty much in goat control format, and even before then in like Donzalug hand loop format. There used to be tournaments for people who are unaware. Every Sunday at Toys R Us, they would have like Yu-Gi-Oh Day. Yeah. So every Sunday at Toys R Us, there would be like Yu-Gi-Oh tournament days or whatever. And this was like really early on in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, like literally pre-goat control format.
Wow. Okay. See, I remember getting Yu-Gi-Oh cards at that time, but I was too young to understand the concept of like tournaments and things like that.
Oh, I was definitely too young, but you know, I went into Toys R Us just pure happenstance on a Sunday with my father to go buy packs of Yu-Gi-Oh cards because that was the only place I knew where to get Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And we just so happened to stumble into the tournament they were having. And so every Sunday then my dad would take me to these little tournaments. And, you know, I didn't even understand it was a tournament. I would just show up with like a rubber banded pile of like Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And then I would like walk away and my cards would get stolen and I would cry. And then I'd come back next week because I just wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh. And that was kind of my intro to Yu-Gi-Oh. And when that stopped, when those tournaments stopped, we were there for probably the last one that they ever had there at that Toys R Us. And they told somebody who went there every week said, you know, you come here all the time. There's a card shop right around the corner, like right up the street. And they do tournaments every Sunday as well. So what I guess the meta had been for people who actually played the tournaments is they would go to Toys R Us and play a tournament, and then they would immediately go to a locals straight up the street and play another tournament.
Right.
And so I started doing that for a while, and it was more of, you know, I would show up, I would run around, you know, very hyperactively, get my card stolen, cry, and go home. And, you know, that was my experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time. Grew out of it for a bit. And then I had some friends in middle school who were really into the game. And for one of them, I think it was their 13th birthday, they wanted to go to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals. So we all ended up at that same locals that I used to go to when I was a little kid, like 7 or 8 years later, end up going there again, you know, as now a young teenager.
Right.
And then that became my thing after schools. Every Friday night, I would go there, and that was kind of my extracurricular, just my way to get out of the house. And, you know, just kind of went to my first nationals, I think in like 2015, went like 0-3 drop, was very, very happy with my performance. Yep. Because there was a dinner bet saying whoever was the first person to go 0-3 drop, had to buy dinner for everybody. And I think I went 0-2, and it was like, if I drop at 0-2, do I have to do I have to partake in the dinner bet? And they're like, no, you're fine. So I dropped at 0-2 and I bended the rest of the tournament.
That's crazy.
Yeah, just like trading out of my binder, picked up some like old OCG stuff.
It's a far cry from this year's nationals for you, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this year, I mean, you come today, you know, making the top cut for nationals with Dragon Link, kind of almost in a roundabout way, where I've been taking a break from the TCG to play Master Duel on Twitch. That's kind of what I grind all the time now. And just kind of going back into the format back to back with the Remote Duel YCS and the NAWCQ, making top 8 and then top 64 at those events. Just without playing too much TCG. And just sticking with the deck that I've been playing religiously for like 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm. So I think that it is so crucial for people to understand that path and that progression, that I think there's a lot of discussion these days about new players entering the game and new players, the learning curve for somebody getting into the game. And I think it's really important to understand that, contrary to other games like maybe Pokemon, Hearthstone, or whatever, right? There are other, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, without a play circle, without people to help intro you into the game, currently the resources just don't exist for people to just pick up and play. So when we talk to these people that taught these events, look at you having been playing more or less since 02, right? And then having played at a competitive enough level to where you've gone to nationals since 2015. There is a long-term progression when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh that I think a lot of people really have a hard time realizing versus these other games. Do you think that the complexity of Yu-Gi-Oh is something that's taking you a long time to grasp? Or do you think that it's just, at the end of the day, it takes a lot of time to really understand the format and just play test within each individual format? Because for me, I can understand rulings and lines of play, but understanding every individual deck as it comes out, for me, is a hard bar to clear with as busy as I am as an adult, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's definitely merit in that conversation, right? Like, a lot of players who, you can see consistently do well. A common thread with a lot of them are that they were Dragon Duel players. Any household name that you can think of, for the most part, was a Dragon Duelist at some point.
Yeah.
And I think that there is that level of, like, you kind of need that background, that history to, like, get all these complexities of the game, because there isn't something like set rotation. There aren't, like, rotating formats or anything like that. So you have to have this huge base of, like, knowledge in order to play around stuff optimally a lot of the time. But I think on the flip side, something I'm not sure I've seen too many people talk about is that Yu-Gi-Oh actually has way more resources, I think, than most other card games. And I've found this myself when I try to get into other card games, because I'm going to be partaking in Twitch Rivals this Wednesday for Marble Snap.
That's tomorrow, Wednesday, August 23rd. Everybody tune in.
Absolutely. Is that tomorrow? I thought today was Monday. 2 days from now. 2 days from now.
The podcast episode comes out tomorrow.
Okay.
Pre-recorded
tomorrow. So I'm going to be in that tomorrow. And something I've noticed is it's kind of hard for me to find resources for the game as, like, a new player, because just the guides, the amount of content isn't there. Same thing, because I played Hearthstone for my university's esports team at one point, and it took me a little while to get into the game. Mm-hmm. Same thing with stuff like Pokemon. The Pokemon TCG doesn't have as many resources, I feel, as Yu-Gi-Oh does. Or even something like VGC, which isn't a card game but is similar. So some of these other games just don't have the amount of, strategic content creation going around for it. And I've kind of found ways to, like, appreciate the Yu-Gi-Oh community that I didn't really think about in previous years when I've started branching out into some of these other games. Because, for example, like with Pokemon, if you want to, like, learn stuff, you have to go through all of these, like, buried Discord servers.
True.
And it's like, I would never know if I was not part of the community that I needed to, like, go to this Discord server, find a link, talk to some people who will then send me a link to another Discord server that then, blah, 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 blah. Or like the One Piece card game, for example, as well, is something that I'm learning. There is a simulator for the game, so you can test, but to get it, you have to be a part of a Discord server.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's insane.
So the only reason I know that is because I was sent the link to that Discord server by somebody from the Yu-Gi-Oh community. So if I didn't have the Yu-Gi-Oh community as a, a background for me, I would have no idea that I could practice One Piece without knowing people, IRL.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm really grateful for in the Yu-Gi-Oh community is just how much visibility there is and how sometimes easy it can be, where you can just go to YouTube and just search the name of a deck and you'll find like 50 videos on how to play it.
This is something that I saw Jeff Jones talking about on Twitter as well, because he said that he was trying to learn a little bit more about the actual in-depth competitive scene of the Pokemon TCG, and that it was just impossible. Even in Yu-Gi-Oh, yes, you can find deck profiles, but you can also find these really in-depth 2-hour-long combo guides and super in-depth. Every card in the deck profile is broken down extremely card by card on what I play one of this exact card. I play it for this exact scenario and this exact combo line. It comes up here, and you get these like 2-hour-long tutorials on these pet decks, right? Much less the actual competitive ones.
Right.
So, and then when you go over to Pokemon, there's maybe like one channel in all of Pokemon, and it's a really small, like micro niche guy that does any kind of explanation in deck profiles. So it's really interesting to me to see the duality there, and a lot of it could just be that at the end of the day, Pokemon is so much more casual in a lot of ways than Yu-Gi-Oh is. And Yu-Gi-Oh has its casual audience, don't get me wrong, but even though it's casual guy at your locals is like doing a full Adamantipator combo on you, it's like, ugh, what's going on?
No, it's really funny you say that, because I went to NAIC, which is the national championship for Pokemon, and while I was there, I bumped into Andreas Torres, who is a prominent Yu-Gi-Oh player. Right. And we got to talking, and he started telling me exactly that, that he has seen in the Pokemon community, for at least for the TCG, somebody will make a misplay in the finals, like grand finals of a major tournament, like the equivalent of our YCSs. And their opponent will be like, oh, that's a misplay. Here, if you do this, this, and this, you'll be in a better position. And then the opponent then loses because they allowed their opponent to take back a play, told them a better line of play, and then let them make that play in grand finals.
That's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but that was the story that, he told me. So, maybe I misunderstood, but that, I think there's definitely some veracity to that it can just be more of a casual audience. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh, where I think Yu-Gi-Oh does something really, really cool is that because of how complex it's gotten, it has become kind of this hyper competitive, like, bubble to where it breeds, it breeds players who want, it breeds players who want to be good. It breeds a lot of resources. And I think it really comes down to your own willingness and motivation to learn rather than anything else. Because, while some of the players, who right now are, have been playing for forever, I think about other players, like Enzo, for example. I believe he just turned 18 and he's already gone to the World Championship as an adult, as an NA representative. So
think about this. Yu-Gi-Oh is older than he is.
Exactly. So we're still finding players who are super, super good at the game, who are young. And, I think about Ryan too, like Ryan Yu. Last year we didn't have an NAWCQ. We had a kind of like the championship where it was like the NAWCQ, but you just didn't get to go to Worlds. That year, I believe Ryan was also 18. First year that he could have potentially qualified for the World Championship, and he got second place. And then, again at the NAWCQ this past year, he got 32nd. And these are young players. So I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh is necessarily in danger of, being a game where you have to have been playing for like 10 plus years to know how to play it. Because, younger people are still doing exceptionally well and beating out some of the players that have been playing their whole life.
Absolutely. So Do you think that Master Duel provides a good enough introduction into the game for the ones that are entering?
That's hard for me to say because, I play Master Duel every day.
If I'm not mistaken, last year you were like top 3 most hours streamed on Master Duel in the world.
I think I was number 1, actually. I think I was number 1 for that, at least in watch hours.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah, so I play a lot of Master Duel. I think part of my issue with the conversion, and I think this is something that's been talked about, is that whenever you have a simulator, an automatic simulator, that is handling all of the intricate interactions for you, it can lead to confusion if you go back to the paper card game. Because,
Sure.
And this has happened to me too, where, sometimes the interactions are different in Master Duel. It uses the OCG rule base for the most part. Sometimes there's bugs, sometimes there's ruling disputes. So one that I can think of, for example, was in Master Duel, if you activate Magnemite and you target a card in the graveyard, and Chainlink 2 is goes in match, and say the only monster I control is Lubellion, so a light, a different attribute. So Chainlink 1 Magnemite, Chainlink 2 goes in match. In Master Duel, the Magnemite banishes the target, but Magnemite stays in the hand. But the same interaction came up for me at the NAWCQ, and it was ruled that the target gets banished and Magnemite goes from my hand to the graveyard. Goes to the field and then sent to the graveyard because goes in match is applied. And these type of ruling, quirks, I'm to this day now, I'm not sure exactly how it's supposed to work because it works one way in Master Duel and one way in the paper card game. Assuming that ruling was correct as given by the head judge and the assistant head judge / the floor judge. I've talked to other judges and they've agreed with those rulings. So assuming that ruling is correct, there's a clear discrepancy there between the two, the two platforms. And it can sometimes be hard especially for new players.
Can you?
Oh yeah.
Can you say again what the ruling was in paper play? I'm gonna be honest. I was distracted by chat.
Oh, no worries. The ruling was that Magnemite. I have a light monster on the field.
Right. Yeah, I heard what the ruling was in Master Duel, which is the way that it made sense in my head.
So in the paper card game, the Magnemite activates, it banishes the card, and then it goes to the graveyard from my hand. It doesn't stay in my hand. It goes to the graveyard.
Huh?
That was the ruling that I was given, and I've had multiple judges confirm that as far as they know is the correct ruling. So, I don't know if I'm being told wrong information, but that was how it was ruled, and I've had multiple judges confirm that is how it should be ruled. So sometimes there are, differences.
Wow,
because
that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, so the ruling, as it was explained to me, is that Gozen doesn't technically prevent the Magnemite from summoning itself, even though, in my mind, it definitely should prevent it. But technically it summons, but then due to the Gozen restriction, I was already controlling a light, so I have to get rid of the now dark on my field. That was the ruling as it was explained to me.
I would think that it would try to resolve as much as possible and banish and then stay in hand.
Right. So what they're saying is that because it tries to resolve as much as possible, it still summons itself, but then just goes to the graveyard. So even me, an experienced player, who thought it worked one way, similar to how I've, always thought it would work, and then how I saw it work on Master Duel, even I have had, incidents where it's like, okay, now I'm not really sure how this card works anymore. I thought I knew, now I don't.
Right.
So I definitely feel that frustration for newer players, because something I've heard a lot is that when Master Duel came out, a lot of locals had a lot of new players. People were like, oh yeah, I play Master Duel. I love the game. I wanted to get in the paper card game. But a lot of those players end up quitting because they find it difficult to keep up with all the rulings.
Right.
And I don't really know, a good solution to that in my mind, because you do need to know how cards work. You do need to know these interactions. This is, in my mind, the thing that really ultimately differentiates like less good players from better players.
Right.
Is just how well do you know the game mechanics. And some of that can be boiled down to reading the cards, and some of it just comes down to experience. So, I'm not really sure if there is a good solution to that. But I think, anybody who's invested enough in the game and wants to know about it and wants to play and get better, they're going to seek out that knowledge.
Right. I think my first step, if I was all of a sudden made CEO of Konami, would be I think that there needs to be a pretty clear, very, very, very in-depth tutorial available through Master Duel, not just for, how to normal summon, how to tribute summon, things like that. I think that there needs to be when you enter the game for the first time, when you enter the platform, there should be a question when you first make your account that says, how experienced are you in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game? I've never played, are you new, or like a beginner? Are you an expert? Kind of 3 or 4 different levels. And then depending on what their answer is, they get a different experience, right? If they're an expert, they have the option to skip the tutorial entirely and jump straight into the game. Or if they're maybe newer, they have to complete the tutorial up to, X amount. Or if they have never played before at all, they have to, do the tutorial up to, maybe a little bit farther. But have that tutorial always there, completable up to a certain point. That way you can always have a certain baseline of, you can always go here and get this tutorial. And, let it be like ridiculously in depth, let it get into, just the very basics of chain links all the way down to trigger rules and, everything. Even get into individual rulings if you need to, right? Set up very specific scenarios to learn and understand how these things work. Make it like, an 80 to 100 different, mini game scenarios that you can play through to understand the complexity of these different rulings. I think if you made that available, right? Don't make it mandatory. Don't make it to where everyone has to go through this ridiculous tutorial, especially somebody who already knows how to play the game and knows what's going on. But I think right now that super in-depth tutorial is not something that exists. And I think it's something that really should.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because they do have that question when you make a new account. This is something I'm very familiar with because I make a lot of new accounts to play Master Duel. I think I've made over 20 or 30 accounts.
I made the one account when I first started the game, and I played for a month, and I haven't touched it since.
Yeah, so I've made a lot of accounts. So they do have those questions, and they have been working on the tutorial. They did release kind of an update at one point that doubled the length of the tutorial, and it has some, really the stuff I was kind of surprised to see there. Like, one of the tutorials kind of teaches you that you shouldn't set cards until main phase 2 because there are cards that could punish you for it. So they use I think it's like Crimson Ninja or something like that as an example. That will pop a trap card if you attack into it. It's like a flip monster. So it's kind of like trying to teach people the Malevolent Catastrophe thing, where it's like you don't set cards until main phase 2 because you can lose to Malevolent Catastrophe. But the thing that I don't like with the tutorial, because it goes more in depth than you might think, is that a lot of the mechanic stuff is their text boxes, and you have to read the text boxes. But if you're a new player to a game, you might get bored reading through the text boxes. You might just see the free gems and want them. Yeah. And you might do what I do when I've created a million accounts, and you might just start spam clicking and just getting through them, because, I have it down to a science to where I can build literally any deck in the game between 30 minutes to 90 minutes after creating an account. And with the new tutorial, it's leaning towards 30 minutes. It's really, really fast to create a new Master Duel account, build pretty much any deck that you can imagine in the entire game, and then go straight into ladder and then just start laddering as fast as you want. And, there's some exceptions to that, like certain meta decks, you kind of have to time it to where Kashtira, is a good example where all of the Kashtira cards are in a selection pack right now. So once that selection pack leaves the shop, there might not be a pack where you can get those cards. So if you tried to do a Kashtira run, in say 4 months, it might not be possible or easy to build that deck. You might have to get a little bit lucky with pulls elsewhere.
Counterpoint. Who's going to want to build Kashtira in 4 months? That deck is cringe now.
I mean, fair. But, it's just one of those things, where you're right. I think there's a hard balancing point because they should have an ability to teach people the game, and have a really depth Konami sanctioned tutorial. But the counterpoint is if you do that, who's to say that they're going to actually pay attention? The resource could be there, but nobody's going to want to sit through, almost a 3-hour Yu-Gi-Oh lecture. Nobody's going to want to do that if they're new to a game. They're going to pick something up that's easier. So something that I'm excited for is I think Konami has a new product that's coming out. I don't know if it's already out. But it's a 2-player kit, and it's supposed to have
two decks.
2 decks and a manga that kind of guides you through a duel that is allegedly supposed to teach you everything that you need to know about playing the game. So I'm really excited to see what they do with that, because I think that they understand the position the game's in. And I think they're really trying to find ways to make it more and more accessible to newer audiences.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that when it's coming up in the Konami shareholder meetings, they've got their eyes on it.
Absolutely. I mean, how can you not?
Right.
But at the same time, too, though, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of in this cool place where that because it is hard, it almost creates a niche for itself among card games. Because I feel this sentiment has been passed around for a while, but it's if you can be good at Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can be good at every card game that exists. If you are good at another card game, it does not mean you'll be good at Yu-Gi-Oh!
Right.
And in that way, it kind of turns Yu-Gi-Oh! Almost into the Tekken of card games in some ways, where it's it's so convoluted and deep and hard that people who are really looking for that challenge and really want to test their own skills, maybe somebody who's an experienced card game player wants something that feels totally alien and foreign to them, is something, that's something that they might gravitate to. And I'm not sure if that's a bad thing for Yu-Gi-Oh!, to be perfectly honest.
I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has its own niche, and that niche is something that the players within it love deeply.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's a nice sentiment.
Yeah, I agree. I like its complexity, even though it makes us all sad and need reading glasses. So I have a fork in the road because I think we've got about 20-ish minutes left, maybe 15, and either one of these topics can take up 15 minutes. So okay. I'll let you choose the path that we go down.
All right.
Today, as of recording, yesterday, as of posting, there was a new Master Duel ban list. Yes. Now, as Mr. Master Duel, we can talk about that. Or, if you'd rather, we could talk about the actual TCG state of things right now, where we're starting to get the regional scene for Duelist Nexus going. We're starting to get some results coming in here and there. And, as we go through, we're getting more and more information about the upcoming format. And potentially we could have a ban list arriving in the TCG fairly soon. So I'll leave it up to you. Like I said, we can either split and go to TCG, or we can stay in Master Duel and talk about the new Master Duel ban list. Up to you.
I'll say let's talk about the Master Duel ban list. I haven't really like talked about it with my chat. I think some of them have wanted to. But also, I haven't had as much time to test the TCG as I'd like, so I don't want to say something and then have it be like wildly ignorant. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I'll stick to my comfort zone for right now.
Yeah. Now, what I will say is, before we get into this Master Duel discussion, because I know now that we're talking about Master Duel, all the chatters are going to be looking for the Master Duel content. What I need from everybody in chat is drop a Prime subscription for Mr. TrishulaTTV, because that nice new apartment, it's not going to pay for itself. Right, like, so drop some primes in chat, drop some gifties in chat where all the whales are. Right, I know you're out there. Specifically, drop one to me because I'm getting a lot of ads. So anyway, listen, hey, if everybody could go ahead and drop some primes, drop some gifties, that would be spectacular. We out here. So with that said, go ahead and give me your thoughts on the Master Duel ban list.
Well, my first thoughts is that my chat are all leeches, so they're definitely not going to do that. But
yeah, I know. Aren't they all?
Yeah, literally. What was the streamer who was like, you don't have $5 to watch me or something like that? But yeah, I mean, let's hop into the ban list. I have it pulled up at my end just to talk about it. So I kind of like this ban list. It feels like it's moving the game closer to the TCG's like mentality of
I'm looking at it for the first time right now. This is sick.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hitting a lot of cards. This is probably one of the biggest ban lists that we've had in a long time.
Do you want to talk about the ban list structure in Master Duel? Because we don't ever talk about Master Duel on the podcast.
I mean, it's the same as, the same as it works in TCG, OCG. It's not like Duel Links where it's like, if a card is at 1, you can only play one of in your deck. But
right. Well, I was talking more about like the timing on these, because it's way more often.
Yeah, we get them about every month, but they typically don't hit cards as severely. So they'll typically hit cards around the issues. So they like to semi-limit cards quite a bit. Quite a bit. Like, Tier has been hit, I want to say, like 5 times, but in those, it was like they banned terraforming, they limited King of the Swamp, they limited Foolish Burial Goods. Like, they started limiting all these cards that were not like, all they had to do was ban Kit Close if they wanted to really hit the deck, but they've done everything else. Like, they semi-limited all the names. They limited all the Ishizu cards except Kelbeck.
Kelbeck?
Yeah, Kelbeck. They so funnily enough, this is kind of a shock for TCG players, but Kelbeck is not actually the better one in OCG and Master Duel, because Master Duel uses OCG hand triggers. So Agito was actually always the better one in OCG and in
I didn't realize Master Duel used OCG triggers.
It does. It does use OCG. It uses the OCG rule base. So if you're unfamiliar with how the interaction works, if you're playing a Tournament mirror match or something, and you get into like what we would call like a shuffler war, where you say mill 5 cards, your opponent mills 5 cards, you do all of your triggers, they do all of theirs, and then, for example, the opponent might use a shuffler like a Keldo and target your guys in the graveyard, and let's say they target 2 activating names and like a Kelbeck in your grave, or not a Kelbeck, that's a bad example, like a Keldo, like one of your shufflers. In the TCG, you've already had to put down all of your triggers. So, like, if you had a Kelbeck or an Agito, it had to be on the same chain. In OCG, though, you can hold hand triggers until the chain resolves. So they would be able to use the, the Keldo to target my stuff. And then in response, I could then chain Agito to target the Keldo that they're targeting and bring it back out. So you can intentionally not declare your trigger immediately, wait for them to use like a shuffler or something, and then in response, then choose to use your hand trigger. So because hand triggers work differently over there, and in Master Duel, Agito gets significantly better than it ever was in the TCG. Because we always looked
terrifying.
we always looked at Agito as kind of like the mediocre one, because it's like, well, the hand trigger effect isn't that good because they're just going to shuffle your target anyway.
Right.
So in OCG Master Duel, it's way better because you let them shuffle first and then you make their shuffler worse and get 2 bodies.
Yeah.
So on that note, one of the first bans here is Agito. Agito is now getting banned.
All because of some hand triggers.
Literally. So Agito is now banned. Rongo is now banned. Bishbal
That needed to happen almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, because Master Duel also had Numerous Avail before the TCG did. So I knew about the sales ban Numerous Avail nonsense a long time, before we ever had the card. Thankfully, we never had Rongo when Numerous Avail came out. But, it was just so scary because, you could play into Runic and then they would just Rongo you. Or like Flu would Rongo you. And you would just be like, what is going on? Like, why am I getting Rongoed? So they're getting rid of Rongo, which is great. Bish Balkan, which I'm sure Coder is happy about, is now gone.
Everyone's
Black
happy.
Dragon, finally gone. I think OCG is the only place that still has Black Dragon now.
Crazy.
And then
I think it's a 1-of over there, isn't it?
no, I think it's at 3. I think it's at 3. Maybe they just hit it to 1 recently, but the last I checked, it was at 3.
Crazy that deck doesn't see play over there.
Oh, it does. They have a whole archetype called Earth Good Stuff over there.
It's crazy that it's not just the best deck, is what I mean.
It was for a little bit, I think, actually. But
enough.
it was a short window. And
We talk about Master Duel, and all of a sudden, all the watchers come back. I see how it is.
and then Merly is now banned in Master Duel.
I'm just gonna have my editor just put Subway Surfers and Master Duel on in the corners.
Yeah. So now that Merly is banned, Merly's kind of the interesting ban, right? Because why would you ban Merly? In my mind, it's because it's level 2. We still have Elf. Mm-hmm. We still have Sprind. So Merly is pretty good.
So I actually made the case that Merly should have been banned in the TCG, but then they went the other route and banned Elf instead, which I wasn't expecting. So, but that was my argument, was that Merly should have been the ban instead of Elf in the TCG before we got the Ishizu cards, and before that would have allowed Sprite to essentially be at full power and not have the crossover that it had with the tier limit deck, which I think was the danger. But it doesn't matter because they really wanted tier limit Ishizu to be tier 0, and it was.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel
rip
about
Merly in chat. Don't do that. No.
07 Merly, rest in peace.
No.
Yeah, I mean Merly ban kind of makes sense. But personally, I think Elf is still the better ban, because I think Elf can easily be compared to Nightmare Goblin. Any generic Link 2 that provides targeting protection for anything that it points to is pretty good, as we saw with Goblin.
Indeed.
So that card still being legal is kind of scary to me. But
yeah, I don't think you can have both Elf and Sprind legal. I don't like it. I don't like that at all.
Me either, but that's the world I live in.
It's Josh Schmidt's world, and we're living in it.
Literally. And then, so those are the bans. Merly's kind of the interesting one because you still have the other names at 2. So now you only get 2 fusions a turn instead of 3, and there's no... I don't think we have instant fusion anymore in Master Duel. So...
Really?
Yeah, I think they banned it.
With it, honestly.
Yeah, so it's starting to look like slim pickings, and like you only have one King of the Swamp, so it's hard to get to polymerization to kind of cheat out another fusion. So tier is getting worse and worse by the minute. And Dragon Link is picking up in popularity very quickly because of the World Championships. And that deck has a very easy time into tournament. So the tier isn't looking great coming into new metas. Then the limits are also kind of interesting. Branded Fusion going to 1 is kind of funny to me because I never play against it in Master Duel, so I don't know where all these branded players are coming from.
I don't know, but I know where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, true. This deck just won't stop getting support.
So
Grass
branded, says the Sword Soul player.
I hate branded.
I do too. I hate branded. It's been around for too long and it needs to die, says the Sword Soul player.
Yeah.
I would rather normal summon Mogi.
I mean, Aluber is just the new Alistair, which is just like annoying. And then Grass going to 1 is pretty interesting just from a math perspective, because in a 60 card deck, Grass at 2 is the same as limiting it in the first place. So we can almost look at Grass as like being at half of a card, because like the percentage chance to draw it's now lower than normal. So that's interesting, but Grass is very toxic, so I'm happy with that.
It is weird that it's at 1, but I think that it presents an interesting deck building decision. So
it is. I think it's a little bit less interesting now though with it at 1, because it's even less likely that you're going to make that choice. I think at 2 it was like kind of interesting because it's like the odds that you draw it is the same as drawing a 1 of, but it's still like it doesn't feel that bad because you're playing 2 of it. So maybe I'll start queuing into more left arm offering nonsense. Cool. There's that. Kelbeck is now at 1, so we now only have 1 shuffle or 1 Miller and then 2 shufflers total. Sprite Jet and Swap Frog are also going to 1, which is interesting. Just more hits to Sprite, which I don't think were super necessary. Blaster's coming to 2, which, I mean, as resident Dragon Link player, I don't think the Dragon Rulers do much of anything, so I think that's fine. Extrav is going to 2. This one's kind of interesting. All of the pots in Master Duel, except for Desires, I believe, are hit in some way. Like, almost all of them.
So the exact opposite of TCG.
Yes. So in Best of 1, the pot cards are probably a bit stronger. Same with all the floodgates. All the floodgates are on the ban list for the most part, because those type of strategies just super overperform in Best of 1 because there's no siding, so you can't put in back row hate against them unless you're just pre-siding back row hate for the off chance you get into a back row deck. So it makes sense, and that's maybe one of those hits that people who don't play Master Duel as much might look at kind of weird. Luster Pendulum, Draco Slayer coming to 2. It was at 1 before because it was based off the OCG ban list, and it was at 1 over there for a long time. But we did just get the Draco Slayer cards like a week ago, so that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense as like a push to the Draco Slayer strat. Yeah,
exactly. And then cards that are coming back are like Nadir Servant, Ancient Fairy, and Girsu, which none of are super meta relevant, so not too bad.
So overall, what do you rank this list? Because me seeing Bish Balkan, Rongo, Murley, Block Dragon all banned, and Agito too, I guess, but like, I don't know, man. I see some absolute felons on this ban list, some criminals.
I mean, this is definitely S+ tier in terms of ban lists. Just getting rid of cards that are really, really toxic, keeping the game pretty fair. There's some decent tournament hits, which I think are merited because we still have tier support coming, so we're still getting cash tier in the future. So I think it's merited. Branded Fusion to 1 is just funny to me, but sure. Grass to 1 is fine because losing to Grass never feels fun. More sprite hits. I don't think they deserved it, but I'll take it. Lower the power level of the game some more.
I am having a good time, but we are nearing our time limit. So I'm going to go ahead and thank all of our wonderful, wonderful patrons for their continued support. And I'm excited to get some reactions on these because our patron names are like CMO tier patron names. We have the best patrons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a huge thank you to Bring Red Reboot back to 3. That's how we start. Kane
Agreed.
Martin, Zyphorus, Big Stinky, Blue Eyes is Best, Copium, Branded in Chanel number 5. I like that one. I always enjoy that one. Broken Boy 13, Ding Dongs, Hostess of the Yang Zing. No, nothing on that one. Okay. Gold Secrets coming back when, Konami. HGH Cyber. I used to play Rogue, but then my mom got a job.
All right, that one's wild. That one's wild.
Yeah, that one's been that way for a long time because every single time when someone comes on, it gets that reaction.
Oh, that one's fantastic.
Is Canada Nickelback? John Leal, Level 4 Fire Warrior Gaming, Mountain Man, Nibiru, Cool, Chain Misk, Oatmeal Spaghetti, Only 2 Thrusts, Sorry, It's All I Had.
Is that like a reference to something? That
Nope,
feels like an
funny.
MBT thing.
It's not a reference to anything as far as I'm aware. It's just funny. Funny is the very first time I read that name, I was like, oh yeah, they only had 2 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. Wait a minute.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice that. Oh my god, I'm too innocent for this world.
Yeah. Owen Alvarado, Pistol Place Pendulums, Silver Hope. Understanding and reading are 2 different things. Yeah? No? Okay.
I might be too stupid to understand.
Fair. Virtually Savior's World. As anyone read Toy Vendor, it's kind of like reading Miss Gars. There's lore behind that name. That name was different.
Okay.
It's been changed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, my other co-host, Giant Skyhawk, I was telling you how, like, in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's these 2-hour tutorials for these pet decks. He has several out for Fluffle. So when it used to be, has anyone read Toy Vendor? But they had vendor spelled wrong for like 6 months. And he kept saying things about it. So then they just made the name unreadable hard, basically. Aaron Gardner, Alexander Chan, Asami, Ashless Chaps, Itzio Simp of the Silver Castle, Blackwing Silver and the Ascendant is the best Floodgate, Box Wine, Come On and Get Your Game On, Duty Booty, Dragon Maidenless Behavior, I'm about to Rika Glamour Tribute for Cost D's Plant Nuts in Your Mouth, Cam the Anti-Magical Hats Guy, Neshi, Old Man Red, Pin Code 143, and Slaking It Up. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the podcast. Trish, you want to get some last-minute plugs in for all of the listeners at home?
Well, I don't really know if I have any plugs for myself, but to return the favor, I think for all of your viewers, all of your listeners to the podcast, definitely drop even like the $5 tier in the Patreon. Anything helps, they're putting on a good show.
Whoa, this guy.
Yeah, and remember to follow, subscribe, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah,
the $5 and up tier gets an extra episode every week.
Oh, see, there you go. There's your incentive.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, chat. We appreciate you also being here.